the Jet Setting Wealth Advisory Podcast, where your financial journey takes flight with David T.U. As an airline pilot and financial expert, David merges the aviation industry and wealth management to help you navigate today's complex financial skies. Each episode features expert insight, blending personal stories with essential financial strategies. We ask that you fasten your seatbelts and sit back as we prepare for takeoff. Our destination, your financial empowerment.
Welcome to the Jet Setting Wealth Advisory Podcast. I'm your host, David T.U., and today we're absolutely delighted to be joined by one of the most influential voices in aviation law, Mr. David T. Norton. As a partner and head of the aviation practice at the Shackelford, McKinley Norton, David brings decades of experience navigating the complex legal landscape of business aviation. He is board certified in aviation law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. David's internationally recognized practice serves a wide range of clients, from Fortune 50 companies operating high-performance jets to aviation services providers and individual aircraft owners. His expertise spans everything from regulatory strategy and transactional law to tax, risk management, and dispute resolution with all the different regulators. A graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy and a former KC-10 pilot and aircraft commander, David has not only served in multiple combat operations, but also continues to fly privately. His deep involvement in aviation and advocacy through the MBAA, FAA, rulemaking committees, and national aviation coalitions make him a true thought leader shaping the future of this industry. In today's podcast, we'll unpack critical legal issues that every aircraft owner and operator should know, explore tax and regulatory trends, and gain insight into David's mission to support safe, smart, and strategic aviation practices. So welcome, David. Long-winded.
Thank you, David. I'm absolutely delighted and honored to be able to chat with you today. So thank you.
Well, it is our honor as well. So let's get started. Let's start with your story. You served as a KC-10 pilot and aircraft commander in the U.S. Air Force. What led you from the cockpit to the courtroom, and specifically to aviation law?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I thoroughly, being a pilot was my very first passion. Love airplanes, everything about airplanes. Was fortunate enough to do a couple different things in the Air Force.
Okay.
And after the academy, and I trained as a navigator first and then a pilot, and I had done an MBA. So out of the academy, I swore I was never going back to school. That's a pretty common result. But
little did you know.
Exactly. And then while I was at Barksdale Air Force Base, I signed up for an MBA program, because if you're an officer and you want to proceed or progress, you need to get a master's, and I didn't even have a girlfriend at the time, so it was like something to spend time on. So I started doing this MBA program, and I was like, wow, this is actually fun. So
sure.
I finished the MBA in finance, and by that point I'd gotten married, and I was in an emergency procedures sim one night doing they were trying to kill me in my KC-10, and we were taking a break. And the sim instructor we were taking a break, we were just chatting, and he mentioned this guy that has since become a very good friend of mine, who was finishing up law school at SMU over here in Dallas and was going to be an aviation lawyer. And I just went, all right, you can do that?
Wow.
So I started doing some research, and I found out that, lo and behold, you could, although they don't, in a sense, they don't really recognize specialties in law school, SMU is the home of the Journal of Air Law and Commerce, which is the only aviation law review. And I didn't really know what that meant, but it sounded really good. And it was an easy transition from Shreveport, Louisiana to Dallas, Texas. So I loved the Air Force, and probably one of the hardest days of my life was the day that I went in and put my papers in with my squadron commander. But it was for a couple different reasons, it was the right choice. So, and I never really thought of being a lawyer. I was always kind of intrigued by it. I knew I was a school teacher's kid. I didn't.
Sure.
The lawyers lived in the fancy houses across town, and it sounded really intriguing, but it wasn't something that I conceptualized. But the more I found out about it, and I'd actually done a law class at the academy, and And I thought, that's the next big adventure. So I headed over to law school. Knock on wood, I seemed to do pretty good at law school, and actually ran the journal, and got a really good job out of law school here in Dallas.
Okay.
And while I was finishing up law school, I talked to a really good lawyer, a woman based in DC, who kind of became a mentor. And she'd mentioned the National Business Aviation Association and the practice of business aviation law. So she said, go join NBAA. So I joined a really, really big international firm, and I said, hey, I want to build an aviation practice. And they kind of laughed at me, but they gave me all the rope I needed to hang myself. And they let me join NBAA. And I actually started there in litigation. You mentioned the courtroom. I did that for a little while.
Mhm.
I won one directed verdict in a jury trial in a federal court. And as soon as I won that, I said, I'm done. I'm never going back into the courtroom. So I have a perfect litigation record. And
I see.
And I transitioned to I'm really a transactional and regulatory lawyer. So I work
Got
with
it.
folks. I love helping people figure out how to own and operate their airplanes, and then deal with all the different agencies that touch on that as they do that. So that's a long answer to a short question, but that's the background.
Fantastic. So let's go right to it. You mentioned regulatory bodies. You've helped clients navigate the FAA, DOT, TSA, IRS, and even the SEC, all U.S. bodies of regulators
Yep.
in terms of various different issues. What are some of the most common legal pitfalls or compliance blind spots that you see in business aviation?
That's a really good question. So the biggest issue I deal with on a daily basis,
Okay.
as soon as somebody talks about owning and operating an airplane, be that a pilot or some kind of a business that recognizes the value, if they talk to, their estate planning attorney or their corporate attorney or their CPA or their bank or their buddy down Hangar Row,
Sure.
and none of these people have ever talked to an FAA aviation regulatory attorney, the very first thing they're going to talk about is tax, which is very important. Then they're
Sure.
going to talk about civil risk management, which is important. And they're going to
Sure.
completely forget or not realize that they're doing something that is super highly regulated by this crazy little agency called the Federal Aviation Administration. And I can almost guarantee that all those people are going to recommend a structure that is an illegal charter operation as far as the FAA is concerned. So the single biggest issue I deal with on a daily basis is people that want to create holding companies. They'll go to their CPA and say, hey, I want to do this, or their estate planning attorney say, well, we're going to create a single member LLC, and we're going to treat you, it's going to be disregarded, and then we'll have it own and operate the airplane. Isn't this great? We've just created this great risk shielding structure.
Sure.
But it's really you. And guess what? That's all wrong.
Okay.
Right? What the FAA says, and what the FAA has said for 30, 40 years, longer than that, since the rules that they started promulgating that address this started in the early 1970s.
Okay.
So the very first thing to know about the FAA is there's no such thing as a disregarded entity. That is a federal income tax filing status.
Okay.
And that's very important for federal income tax, but guess what? The FAA could care less how you file your federal income taxes, right? So if you create David T's Airplanes LLC, and you go out and buy a really cool Mooney or a King Air or whatever you want to get, and your CPA sets you up so David T's Airplanes LLC is a single member disregarded entity, your CPA is going to think that David T owns an airplane, and David T does not own an airplane. He owns a company.
Sure.
And that company owns an airplane.
Owns the airplane.
So if you're treating the company as the operator of the airplane, and you're throwing people in the back, and you're flowing money into that company in order to cover the fuel bill and the hangar and whatever, what have you just created? You've created a company who is providing an air transportation service.
I see.
What is that? That's a charter company. If that's on a Mooney or a King Air, you better have a Part 135 air carrier certificate to do that. Okay. So that's what the FAA calls a flight department company.
Okay.
That is probably the single biggest issue I deal with. So
Okay. Huge.
big,
That's
big
huge.
issue.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry, you were going to ask a question?
No, please. I was going to ask you to follow on this is that do you have any general recommendations? And I want to emphasize again, just general
Yeah,
recommendations for people
thank
that
you.
are listening to this podcast. And there's a lot of people that listen to this, business owners, aircraft owners, and whatnot. What, if they're doing it, first, how do they know that they're doing it wrong? And then secondly, how do you go about fixing it if they realize that they're doing something wrong?
Yeah, so good questions. And thank you for saying that too. Yeah, I do want to say I'm speaking to you in generalities. I'm not trying to,
Absolutely.
legal advice to anybody. In order to provide legal advice, I would need to connect with you and make sure I
Absolutely.
understand what's
And
going on.
we'll
But I'm
talk
giving
about
you,
that, how people can connect with you
yeah. So,
later
but
on.
these are some general legal provisions. So the first thing I do want to say is people look at me and say, Norton, you are frippin' nuts. You don't know what you're talking about. Go down Hanger Row and everybody is set up that way, so you must be
Sure.
wrong. And when I'm counseling clients, and quite often I'll bring on a client and I'll say, okay, look, hire me initially for an hour. We're going to do an initial consultation, and I'm going to walk you through Air Law 101. And
Okay.
that is that's a interactive session, and I'm going to talk to you about some FAA rules, some civil risk rules, some federal tax rules, some state tax rules. And once we go through that, you're going to be better educated on what you can do, and I'm going to have a better understanding of what you want to do.
Okay.
Now, to your point about this flight department company and what do you do? The first thing I say to people is Part 91 is highly regulated, but it's not. Well, what the
Okay.
heck do I mean, right? As you know, Part 91 has all kinds of rules. It's the rules of the road. It tells you
Sure.
how much runway you need. It tells you who to talk to on the radio, what airspace you can fly, and so forth and so on. It's highly regulated in that sense. Part 91, people need to understand, is unregulated in the sense that if you're just flying around Part 91, the FAA assumes you know what you are doing, and there's really no specific safety inspector who's assigned to look over your shoulder. They don't pay attention to you until, number one, there's an accident or incident that
Sure.
draws their attention. Or number two, somebody calls the illegal charter hotline and turns you in. Well, guess
Sure.
how many people have been flying around for 20 years on their nice shiny airplane and never were involved in an accident or incident and never got turned in? That doesn't mean that they were ever legal that entire time. It means they never got caught. Those are
Got
two
it.
different things, right? So that's the first thing to say is just because your buddy does it, or a lot of people do it that way, it's like lemmings to the sea. So that's the first thing. Now to your second point is, okay, how do you fix that? I will say the good thing with FAA is they did start for many, many years. When I started my practice in this area back in the early 90s, and to some extent, truly to this day, the FAA can barely keep up with scheduled air carriers, American, United,
Sure. Yep.
and so forth, let alone some guy who's flying in a nice shiny airplane in the back of a hangar that they are
Sure.
RFC. That being said, back in about the 2018, 2019 timeframe, the FAA did realize that they had really significantly under enforced in this area, and they have constituted a thing called the Special Emphasis Investigation Team.
Okay.
And it is out looking for people that are doing illegal dry leases or improper chartering,
Wow.
improper flight department companies, and they have been leveling significant civil penalties across the board. Now, the good thing with it and the FAA is they kind of categorize folks into three different areas: the clueless, the careless, and the criminal.
Aha.
The clueless are
Big
people that have
difference.
been trying to do it right, but never talked to a really obnoxious aviation attorney who beat them over the head with these rules,
Okay.
and are not trying to break the rules. The careless are people that ought to know better. And to be quite honest, if you're a professional pilot, you're probably automatically in the careless category because you ought to know better.
Got
The
it.
criminal are the folks that know darn well what they're doing
But
and
they're
are
doing it anyways.
intentionally doing it anyways.
Yeah.
So the FAA is pretty much non-punitive. If you're truly clueless or careless and you fix it, they generally are not going to come back and retroactively enforce against you. They
Sure.
want to see compliance. They want to see safety. If you're criminal, then that's a different matter. Okay, now finally to your question, how do you fix it? So I tell people when I'm doing my Air Law 101, in order to be a legal Part 91 operator, you need to basically fit into one of two categories. Category number one is somebody like me who owns I have a little 1973 Cessna Cardinal. That's my little baby.
Fantastic.
I own it in my own name because I went through this whole analysis myself. How am
Sure.
I going to use the airplane or their tax benefits, so forth and so on? No, for me, it's just, I love flying as a pilot. I love flying around. It's a fun thing to do on weekends. I just own it in my own name.
Okay.
I can carry whoever I want all day long. And as long as I do not accept anything of value from any of my passengers, I tell people I'm here in Dallas. If we want to fly from Executive over to Stevensville and get some barbecue because they got a really good barbecue in Stevensville,
Sure.
I would not even let you buy me a barbecue sandwich.
I see.
Right? The moment I get economic benefit, if I'm getting consideration for carrying a passenger, I become a commercial operator, right?
Okay.
So that's number one. Now there's one guy that I let fly my airplane only because he has more hours on my airplane than I do.
Okay.
And so I have a little written agreement with him that says, hey, when you're flying the airplane, you have become the operator. I'm not going to charge you anything. I'm not doing it for money. It's just, he goes, pays his own gas, and that's it. When he flies it, he can carry whoever he wants. He doesn't own it, but he's become the operator. He can fly it as long as he doesn't take any money from anybody. He's a legal Part 91 non-commercial operator.
Okay.
Now, here's the tricky part. If you want to expand that to some kind of company,
Okay.
an LLC, a partnership, an S Corp, a C Corp, whatever it is, you have to kind of expand this out a little bit, and you have to pass a 3-pronged test.
Okay.
Prong number one, the FAA is going to look at that company and ask, what is its major enterprise for profit? That's the technical legal term.
Okay.
In order to be a legal non-commercial operator, you have to have a company who has a non-air transportation major enterprise for profit. What does that mean? To the FAA, major enterprise for profit means some product or service. The company is providing some kind of product or some service that generates more than 50% of the cash flow through the company that has nothing to do with airplanes.
Points. Okay.
Right?
Got
It's
it.
a widget manufacturer.
Sure.
It's a law firm. It's a consulting firm. It's a CPA firm. Whatever it is, I don't care. It's providing a service. More than 50% of the cash flow through the company is not an airplane.
Okay.
That's prong number one. Prong number two, the primary use of the aircraft, primary in FAA speak generally, or in legal speak generally, means more than 50%. The
Okay.
primary use of the aircraft has to be, magic language, within the scope of and incidental to, close quote, the non-air transportation activity you identified in the first prong. So if I'm a widget manufacturer
Okay.
and I'm flying the airplane around, then the use has to be incidental to and within the scope of widget manufacturing.
I see.
Prong number three, I have to conduct those flights and pay, if I have an airplane, either because I own it in that company or that company is leasing it, and I can come back to leasing in a little bit. If I'm doing that, then I have to pay for all of the use of the aircraft out of the revenue generated from my non-air transportation major
I see.
enterprise for profit with no reimbursement occurring. So now let
Okay.
me go back through those three examples and tell you
Yes.
how people typically screw this up. Prong number one, they go out and they talk to a very, very good CPA or estate planning attorney who doesn't understand the federal aviation regulations, and they
Okay.
create Widget Manufacturing Aviation LLC, a wholly owned disregarded sub of Widget Manufacturer LLC.
Okay.
Then they put the airplane down there. They think they got a liability shield and they just contribute money into it. Well, I've created a charter company. The major enterprise for profit of the aircraft operator is airplanes. Congratulations. That's a flight department company. That's a per se commercial operation, which requires a Part 135 air carrier certificate if we're talking about a small aircraft. That's how
Okay.
people screw up prong number one. Prong number two, I live here in Dallas. Down south down closer to Austin is the hill country. So,
Okay.
we got lots of rich folks up here who want to get a ranch down in the hill country. And it's kind of where they go on the weekends in the summer, and well, it's very hot in the summer. But what they'll say is, okay, I've heard enough. I know that I'm supposed to put my airplane in some company that has something. So I'm going to put my airplane in my ranch. I got David LLC up here in Dallas, and I'm going to put my airplane in Ranch LLC. Isn't this great? It looks like a real company. Okay,
Sure.
so yeah, I got a couple cows, tractor, whatever down there. So then I say, okay, well, where are you going today? Well, I'm going to Chicago. Well, how is that within the scope of an incidental to the business of the ranch? It's not.
Okay.
Okay, you busted the second problem.
Got it.
So you can't do that. I have one in other years, even though I'm in Texas. I got my practice is all over the place, but I got obviously a lot of Texas clients. I have one guy who has a ranch, so I can never use that example with him because he really uses the airplane for the ranch. But generally speaking, most people can't use it for their ranch.
Okay.
Prong number 3. This usually happens to me with property developers, but it's the analogy sticks. So I'll have a company that's a real company. It's providing a service. It's out there building all kinds of property developments. It has real people conducting that business,
Okay.
generating lots of money. They put the airplane there, that's great. But then as they fly on Mondays for Project A, which is a separate company, and then they fly for projects for Company B on Wednesdays, they fly for projects for Company C on Fridays, they turn around and they issue an invoice to Company A, B, and C for those flights. What have I just done? Well, now I'm operating, but I'm getting reimbursed. I'm operating, carrying passengers for compensation. Congratulations.
Wow.
You started as a Part 91 operator, and the moment you sent an invoice, you became a charter operator. Where's your 135 or carrier certificate? So those are the problems. Those are the biggest problems I deal with on an FAA base, on a FAA basis, on a daily basis. So does that all making sense? Or
it does. So what would be the proper structure? And I know everybody's different, but any way to elaborate on a very general basis?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. So, I've just given you just the FAA
problem. Yeah.
So you also have to take into account, let me talk a little bit about civil risk, because that kind of goes to your answer your question. So when you're looking at civil risk, everybody worries about, they say, oh, we got an airplane. You go to your really good CPA or state planning and insuring, they're like, oh, I got to protect you from the dangers. So that's another reason why they want to put you in an LLC. And I have a lot of pilots. So I got a lot of clients that are pilots and they want to go out and buy their own airplane. So it's unique with a pilot. A pilot will show up and say, oh, I'm buying, I'm going to buy a Cardinal. I'm going to buy a Mooney. I'm going to buy a whatever. And I say, okay, well, who's the pilot? I am. Okay, you're going to let anybody else use it? No. Your hand's going to be in the yoke? Yeah. So what on God's green earth makes you think that if you're out flying around and cause a crash, that you're not going to get sued just because the airplane was owned in an LLC?
That's true.
It doesn't matter. People think, oh, well, but I'm the pilot, but your hand's on the yoke. Now, pilot is different than operator. Operator is the person who gets to say where the airplane is going, is responsible. That may be the pilot, or it may be the person who hired the pilot, right? So the operator is responsible. But if you're both, when I fly my Cardinal, I just happen to be both the owner, the operator, and the pilot. Those are 3 different things, but they can all combine into one. Part of the reason I own my airplane in my own name is, and I'm going to get to tax here in a second, but I didn't want all the hassles with tax. I didn't really have a business purpose. And I knew that if I was flying as the owner, operator, and pilot, it didn't matter how the airplane was owned at that point. I was going to get sued. The reason that people think, well, the pilot's not going to get sued. Well, that's normally because the pilot is some poor employed guy flying for the high net worth operator, and they're going to go after the operator. But if you're the only person, you're going to get sued, right? So if you want to manage risk as a pilot or an owner on the Part 91 side of the house, I tell people you need to do 4 things. You got to find a really obnoxious aviation attorney who beats you bloody with the rules. Check. Then number 2, you got to do the due diligence that is appropriate for any airplane operator. Just like when you jump in your car and get on the highway, you don't do that when you've been drinking. You don't get in your car if you obviously have a flat tire. You don't start driving the wrong way down the street. I mean, you do stuff in a non-negligent manner. So number 1 is know the rules. Number 2 is be diligent. Number 3 is buy enough insurance that's structured correctly for what you are doing.
Okay.
Well, like on me, I'm a with my background, I'm an ATP, MEI, CFI, II, all that DC-10 typed. On my
Mhm.
Cardinal, I can get generally 3 mil of liability insurance. Okay.
Okay.
I'm comfortable carrying my family and friends around with 3 mil. I had a client
Okay.
who was probably worth about $100 million who said he wanted to go do some touch and goes with me. And I'm like, you're not getting anywhere near my airplane or your kids, right? So what you do is you insure as much as you can get, and you don't carry somebody who's likely to bust your insurance limits.
Okay.
That's part of being a responsible pilot. Have
I
enough
see.
coverage to cover it. So that's number 3. Then
Three.
number 4 is back to number 1. Follow your attorney's advice and set up a legal structure, because you don't want to go through steps 2 and 3, but after the fact, find out that you were acting illegally, and the insurance company denies coverage.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Right. So that's how you manage the risk. Now,
Okay.
some people come and they want to talk about federal taxes, and there we do a
Okay.
lot of analysis on: are you using the airplane for business? Is it really personal use? If it's business, is there going to be a mix of personal use? And you have to, that's a pretty long drawn out analysis, but those lead to different structures. Generally speaking, if I'm going to fly it for business, if I'm a widget manufacturer, the cleanest way to get the best business deduction is to have the airplane owner operator be the widget manufacturer.
Widget manufacturer.
If you're
Okay.
Part 91, there's no such thing as artificial liability shielding. The way you insure it is you do it right, or the way you cover the risk is do it right,
I see.
insure it. Now you can also get the tax benefit. If you're somebody like me, I didn't want to pay extra Texas property tax,
Okay.
which would be, you have to look at each state, but I didn't want the tax, but I didn't have enough business activity that I was going to get any federal income tax benefit.
Okay.
We look at that. And then from a state tax standpoint, you got to look at the state where you live. So a couple misnomers with state tax. People say, oh, well, I own the airplane in a Delaware LLC, and Delaware doesn't have any tax, so I don't have any tax. No.
Nonsense.
You're a Delaware resident.
Okay.
You come to Texas and you buy something in Texas, I can guarantee you that they're going to collect Texas sales tax from you, and they could care less if you're a Delaware resident, right? So same thing, if you buy an airplane in Texas, it doesn't matter that the company that bought it's a Delaware LLC, you owe tax in Texas, right? So
Wow. Okay.
that's part of the analysis is you got to sit and tell me about where are you using the airplane? Where's it going to be based? Where's it going to be hangared? Where is it going to be located at the time of title transfer if you're buying or selling it? Those are all the things you got to look at for taxes. So at the end of the day, there are a couple different permutations or different ownership structure that we use. But for a Part 91 operator, what it generally boils down to is, for the most part, that's not, again, different fact patterns lead to different structures. But for the most part, if you're really using it in a business, then you tend to put the airplane in the business. Or if it's really a pilot who has their own airplane and they're just flying around for fun and carrying their friends, family, you just own it in your own name.
I see.
Those are the two.
Wow.
Just logical. But I can tell you, again, you can go down Hangar Row and
Yeah.
some airplanes are in LLCs and they're completely doing it wrong. And they've just made a big problem with FAA regulatory issues, which means they have risk management issues, which means they may have also triggered some adverse tax consequences.
Okay.
How's that for
There's a lot to consider there, and there's a lot to chew on for sure. And I would think that it's very vital for all aircraft owners to understand this type of involvement when they purchase the aircraft. Forget the tax part of it, but the structure, the titling, so that they fall within the guidelines of all the regulators, including the FAA, regarding this. You're a perfect person to be speaking about this. Curious, share your hourly rate, consultation rate to talk about this, or is it on your website?
Yeah, so, and I will say there are a number of, let me say this, in a sense, there's a small group of us that do this. If you really want to find, there aren't that many lawyers in the country that just do exclusively
Sure.
aviation. If you want to find good lawyers, like NBAA is kind of the place. So there's maybe 25 or 50 in the country, then we know
Okay.
each other. And then
Sure.
there's kind of outer bands of people that do a little bit. So I'm not the only one. There are some really good lawyers out there. But that being said, I love working with pilots, and so I'm happy to do that. At my firm, I'm the head of our practice. We have, one of my partners is, I think, by far one of the best legal enforcement attorneys. If the FAA shows up and wants to do civil penalty, Greg, my partner, is the guy to go to. Another one of my partners is a walking encyclopedia on aircraft finance.
Wow.
So he's a great resource. I have a young associate, senior associate, who's just a superstar, and he's kind of my right-hand guy. So we have a really, really good team of people. Everything in our case, and for most law firms, it's done on an hourly rate.
Okay.
Right now my hourly rate is $8.25 an hour, to give you a
Okay.
For a lot of people, when somebody shows up to me and they say, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying my Mooney," it's maybe an hour, 1 or 2 hours worth of my time, and
Got it.
we run them through that, and we kind of make sure that they're in the right place, and then it becomes a pretty easy structure. And what I try and do is that initial consultation, make sure that we're all singing off the same sheet of music, and then I understand what the client wants to do, and the client has my goal is that the client walks away from the conversation and the light bulb has kind of come on, and there's just a warm fuzzy that, okay, I get it, because I've always heard parts of this, but hopefully it's kind of pulled it all together, so that if the FAA shows up, or the IRS shows up, or the state taxing authority shows up, you have the right answer,
Okay.
and they go away. That's the end goal, is that
Yes.
what happens. So what we do is we kind of do that initial consultation. That maybe takes an hour or two. And
Okay.
then depending on what you're going to do, we can just help you execute on whatever the right documents are. Maybe just buy the airplane in your name and you're done. And maybe a leasing structure because you got multiple people that are going to use the airplane.
Sure.
It just depends on what structure we end up with.
Fantastic. All right, let's talk a little bit about something that you were instrumental in which is called the Fair Sales Tax Initiative in Texas. Can you walk us through how you came about that and what it means to aircraft buyers and operators today?
Yeah, so that applies.
Tell us what it is first. Not everybody knows what that is, but tell us what that is first, and give us a quick rundown on that, please.
So it's a Texas specific issue, but so let me set the table this way. Again, back to the state tax issue. Whenever you're going to buy or sell an airplane, you have to look at the jurisdiction where the closing is going to occur, because that's
Sure.
where tax attaches. So am I going to trigger sales or use tax? Then you have to look at the jurisdiction, the state where the airplane is going to be based, if it's different than where you closed. For years and years, people said, aha, I'm going to go close in Kansas, because they have this thing called a flyaway exemption. If you close and leave, Kansas says, yeah, we will exempt you, even though Kansas is the state that had the right to collect a sales tax because that's where you closed. Say, well, if you don't live here, you're not going to base it here. We love the fact that you came here and bought some gas and did some maintenance. We won't charge you sales tax. A lot of states say, that's great. If you want to cross state lines solely to avoid the sales tax, then we're going to nail you for the same tax you would have paid had you closed here. So that's typically what's called a compensating use tax. So you have to look at these states that look around. Now, to your specific question, we had a previous Texas comptroller, and for whatever reason, back in the early 2000s, they discovered this thing called the Civil Aircraft Registry, which is a this gold mine of a database of people that own airplanes. And they got really active on finding airplanes that had a nexus to Texas, excuse the pun, and they would send out audit letters and say, we see you bought an airplane, prove to us that you paid the tax or that you don't owe it. And there were a lot of people that didn't do it right and were getting really stung by very unexpectedly getting very big tax bills.
Okay.
Structure right. That's all well and good. I didn't have, if you don't pay the tax, and you need to pay the tax. The problem was that the office went a little bit off the rails. It started to really make up some rules. In our opinion, it really kind of started to make up some rules that really were being made up out of whole cloth, and there was no statutory basis for it or regulatory basis. They were just out. And there were a lot of people that ended up paying tax twice.
Oh, wow.
That didn't really owe it. And it just all kind of came to a head back in about 2015, where at the time, that comptroller was leaving office, and there was kind of a Saturday Night Massacre, or Saturday night, right before that person left, they had promulgated some rules, and it was right at the very end of the year, that were going to kind of slide under the radar and kind of put into place some of the practices they were doing that were really inappropriate. And luckily, we had kind of been watching for that, I and some other folks, and we saw that, and we were able to jump on that and say, wait, that's not, there's no basis for this. And then our current tech comptroller came in, and he obviously had gotten an earful from all the people whose jets he was flying around when he was running for office, because he understood the frustration and some of the unfairness. So he sat down with a number of industry groups and said, talk to me, or his staff did. And we had created the Fair Sales Tax Coalition. And it was really just to be a group that could provide industry information. You know, the problem with the regulators, if you got a regulator and they're charged with doing a job, and they need to do the job, and there's generally a good reason for it. People can debate that. But a lot of times they don't necessarily know that much about the industry they're regulating. And same thing with tax. Kudos to them if they reach out and try and educate themselves on what's going on in the industry. So that's what they gave us the ability to do, was go in and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is why the ramifications they were having. And our approach was, there was one group that was like, there should be no tax, period. And I'm like, that's an impossible, that ain't going to happen.
That ain't going to happen, right?
So
everybody wants their fair cut.
Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. I don't want to be a hog. So our goal was to go in, educate, and say, look, we understand there's a tax obligation, just like all Texas citizens have a tax obligation. But what we need are bright lines that both that we can follow and the comptroller will follow, so that when we're in that situation, we know exactly what we owe. So that whole coalition was a chance. The result of that was a new Chapter 163 to the Texas Tax Code that gave us really bright lines. And since that time, a lot of those problems have gone away, because now I know, depending on what I do, you're going to owe this tax, you won't owe this tax. And it's very easy to say to the client, do it depending on what you want to do. Here's your way. And at that point, there's no surprise. So you just can build that in.
So you establish clarity.
It was, give me the
fantastic.
I'll live by the bright line. So
got it. Fantastic. So aviation related litigation can get complicated very quickly, very fast. What kind of disputes do you most often get involved in, and how do you help clients resolve them quickly, which is what I know everybody would want, and efficiently?
So another good question. So when I started my legal practice, in a lot of ways, if you're a litigator, you pride yourselves on being able to litigate any case, and you jump from industry to industry to industry. The issue with aviation is it's so highly regulated.
Yes.
That I've seen situations before where you have a good litigator, but they're clueless as to, again, why something maybe
aviation. Specific industry.
So we do litigation. The litigation that we help with typically are things like, breach of lease agreements, something where you need to understand what's the norm in the industry and what the regulatory requirements are, so then you can couch it within the litigation correctly.
Understood.
We do, at any given time, I typically have one or two cases where an aircraft has been damaged on the ground and it was somebody's fault, and there's insurance in place, but there's quite often a gap between the total damages and
the deductible and all that.
Yeah, so sometimes we'll help people with dealing with that kind of issue. Sometimes you just have basic breach of purchase and sale agreements or things like that. So it's that type of commercial dispute that we typically do. The one thing we do not do is I do not do any kind of crash litigation. So
understood.
If you're in an accident, I can tell you who the really good guys are. Come and talk to me and I'll tell you who to go to, but that's not something that we do.
All right. Can you share with us a recent or past success story where you helped a client avoid a major legal or a tax headache? Something general, don't have to be, but love to hear something about that.
So it kind of goes back to where people tend to get hurt is where they do stuff and they don't understand the rules, either the FAA rules or the tax rules. So what we pride ourselves on is that, again, you go through that planning session and now you understand the rules and you can guide for it. And I had a client once he came to me, and it was a number of years ago. We were doing, at that time, you could do a like-kind exchange. You can't do those anymore, but we were doing a like-kind exchange with a Texas sales tax trade-in. and all the FAA regulatory stuff. And when we started talking, initially, I kind of give him a cost estimate, and he then doubled the amount of work. And I should have been more clear with him that, yeah, okay, that's going to double your legal fees. Well, at the end of the day, he had been a client, and he was a nice guy, but he was a little perturbed with me for the big bill that I had sent.
Big, yes.
And it was a really, really big project. And it was a number of years ago. So it was, I don't know, it was maybe, well, I'm just making this up. It was like maybe $30,000 or something. I remember. And
Okay.
he was like, that's a lot of money. Well, 2 years later, he got audited with a potential $1 million tax bill, and he survived the audit because of the structure I put him through. And he called me and apologized for paying my rather piddly fee for not.
Relatively, right? Everything is relative.
Everything is relative. So that's the kind of thing we do. Is I'm a lawyer. I have a fiduciary duty to, number one, follow the law and make sure, and then help my clients follow the law. So I'm not going to help you do something to avoid something, but I can help you mitigate. I can help you pay the taxes you're supposed to pay.
And not a cent more.
Not more. And I can help you comply with the rules and do what you're supposed to do, but not do more. That's kind of, and I can help you manage the risk so that you understand it and you're comfortable with it. And
I love that example. Yeah, I love that example. So when you're not advising clients or speaking at conferences, you're flying your Cardinal, Cessna Cardinal, or strumming your ukulele. I did my research on you. How do these personal passions fill your professional work?
So I'm super grateful that I love my job. I love working with pilots. I mean, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I get to talk on a daily basis, pilot talk to pilots, finance talk with the CFOs, and legal talk with the general counsel. So number one, I'm just lucky that I'm in a profession. But I'm also, I used to be, my gray hair, I used to be a distance runner. And then if I had not gone into the academy, I probably would have ended up being a music teacher at some high school in Ohio or something.
Oh, wow.
It was always kind of my passion. So
the other side of the brain.
Yeah, well, I guess, I don't know. So a couple of years ago, I was walking through the music store to get some piano music, and there was this beautiful ukulele on display, and I totally on a whim, I grabbed it, and then it sat on my desk for about a year, and I finally said, I bought this stupid thing. So I fell in love with the ukulele. So my family and friends love to torture me because I just walk around with my ukulele. I have one sitting on my desk right now, and I torture them with my ukulele. It's really hard to be in a bad mood at the end of the day if you can come home and start strumming on an ukulele.
You're absolutely right.
So,
I should do that. I'll go get one myself.
There you go.
Instrument.
I'm a huge fan. They're easy to play, but if you play them right, it's a beautiful instrument.
So you've had an incredible career that you just shared. If you could give just one piece of advice to new pilots or aviation entrepreneur or corporate, someone who's very successful in their business and is looking to purchase an airplane, whatever type it might be, what would that be?
Wow. One piece of...
Or two, if you'd like to share a couple of your wisdom.
Well,
in your
I would say,
experience.
So the first thing, well, let me say it this way. When I was, my kids are now in their early to mid 20s, but as they were growing up, I always told them, number one, find your passion.
Sure.
Whatever it is, because as you enter the work life,
yep,
a lot of hours on it, and it should be something you enjoy. Number two, for them, I told them, figure out how to turn your passion into a steady income stream because you're not coming home. So, and number
you
three,
cut them off.
To my credit, they're both living in away from home, and they cover rent. I never have to send them money. So,
fantastic! Congratulations.
So number one was find your passion. Number two is you make a living at it.
Okay.
Self-sufficient. And then I'm a big fan of, I think nothing is perfect, but we are super lucky that we're blessed to be in a really great place. And
yes,
part of our job is to give back, make it a better place than when we found it. So you better give back, find a way to give back because you're going to make the world better and you're going to be a happier person. So if you apply that to anything you're doing, passion, be self-sufficient, and give back, I think That's pretty philosophic, I guess. I'm sorry for that, but
No, it's absolutely, absolutely fantastic. Any final words?
no, other than, I love flying and I love the industry and I believe in I want the skies to be as safe as possible, but I want people to go have fun. So I am super grateful to you. Even if I never hear from anybody, that is okay, because if I helped get a little bit of the word out and people go do it right, that is
Yes.
a huge win. So I am so grateful to your platform just to kind of spread the word. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, David, for sharing your legal wisdom, some of the war stories and deep industry insight. From the cockpit to the courtroom, your dedication to aviation safety and advocacy is nothing short of inspiring. So to connect with Captain David Norton and learn more about his work at Shackelford, McKinley, and Norton, please make sure to check the show notes for links in the resources. David, would you to share your email address?
Yeah.
And it will be at the bottom of the viewer's screen.
Yeah, that'd be great. Please do. Yeah, emails, that is the best way to get me. I live by my email. So it's dnorton@shackelford.law. And if you
Okay.
that'd be great.
And for the viewers, that is at the bottom of your screen. So I'm David Yu, airline pilot, founder, and wealth advisor of DTY Well Planning Solutions. If this episode gives you fresh perspective on aviation law or helped you think more strategically about your aircraft ownership and operations, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. And of course, give us a thumbs up. Until next time, fly safe, lead smart, and continue building your wealth with purpose and precision. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for flying with us on today's episode of Jet Setting Wealth Advisory. If you enjoyed your journey through the fiscal skies with David T.U., don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and keep your financial knowledge soaring. For more insights and personalized advice, visit us at www.dtywealthplanningsolutions.com and connect with David directly